Greetings everyone, welcome to my sketchbook. I'm going to open up the inkwell here first. I'm going to show you something that is sitting on my desk here. I'm just going to stand it up after, but this is a pen that I had constructed from two Samara seeds. These would be from, let's say, an acorn tree, twig body. There's a fountain pen nib, and I used red wire to attach that. And I have two needles as eyes. Kind of an interesting thing. It actually does write. It's a little strange to write with, though. But it is a really interesting thing. Dragonfly pen. Let's see if that'll stand up in the background there. Oh, of course, if you would fall over. Try that again. Okay. I have my other pen here. Do a little drawing, I think. Maybe something with that. Now, what I have floating around in my head is the idea that dragonflies might be a means of transportation for small humanoid creatures, let's say. So let's start off just by kind of doodling the eyes of the dragonfly. It's going to be kind of messy, I think, to start. I'm going to work on a couple of spots, I think. Like maybe the saddle could go here. So dragonflies have two sets of wings. And maybe the rider could sit here. And can wave. Maybe they'll have like a neat little hat. A little something like that. Okay. The wings, of course, are transparent. So the rest of the body, the thorax, the abdomen, all that neat stuff. We'll be able to see it through the wings. Perhaps we'd have a few things strapped on here. I'm just scratching the rest of the body here. Now, with all that little bits of sketching, I'm going to add some detail very quickly now. Now, it's just a rough idea. It's not going to look exactly like a dragonfly. Just kind of like what I think an insect with the wings would look like. I don't have a dragonfly here in front of me. We'd have to look pretty close to see the rider. Now, I like to think of there being very large creatures, so giants. I also like to think that there are little small creatures as well. And perhaps at one point lived in harmony of some sort. Now let's say here we have another little friend standing. They could be waving back. And perhaps pointing to where they could land. Whoever's showing up for the visit. So that other arm would be here. And they have a neat hat as well. Have a flower here, that'd be kind of interesting. Just to show kind of the scale of who's hanging out. A few flowers. What if try building like a little house maybe? Would use stones for its construction. And they may not have access to glass, so most of the windows would be shutters. And a door. stacks of rocks of various sizes, held together, let's say, with mud and tree sap. It's a sticky material. Perhaps I could have used the base of a tree. So there'd be twigs as well, holding up some of that architecture. Now I wonder, would this be a summertime kind of scene? I'm not wishing the winter away. I did draw some little flowers there. Perhaps we'll have another little round window here. And a roof that's made of grass. I believe this is called like a thatched roof, which would be like straw or grass, as I said. The twine part would be difficult, I think, depending on how you would gather things in the woods. Perhaps here we'd use some sort of hollow material, or maybe more stones. Maybe clay, and you'd make a chimney. I think the object would be almost like a clay pipe. For this scale, I mean. Let's have another flower here. A little bit of detail as I go. Let's have another flower here. This one a little bit shorter with a leaf on either side. Do the petals. Put some definition to this door. A little bit over here as well. Sort of add a little bit of shade, but maybe I'll bring out the brush and water. We're at almost 15 minutes, so I don't want this to go too far with our little fantasy dwelling. The little overhang here. Now I can imagine if you at one point would be looking to build a shelter, and there's not lots of trees around, and you know, you're a pioneer, let's say, and you were given a plot of land. How would you go about making shelter for yourself where it's just flat everywhere? Well, you probably use rocks and stones. You might even sort of start in a pit, or depending on how much water you'd expect in that area, you'd want it elevated so that when the rains came on the flats, it wouldn't just flood your home. So you'd probably have to think about that. Maybe you'd have a rock bed, and then you would kind of pour sand in over that. It'd be interesting to do. You wouldn't really have a plan necessarily unless you knew who your neighbors were, but if you were on, let's say, 25 acres of land, you wouldn't run into them so often. Now, perhaps this side here we would have used larger flat stones to make up the corner of the house wherever we could. Well, could we have, for the final little bit here, well, I am going to do a little bit more to the rider here. Put another flower over here. I'm going to get some ink on that pen. We'll call this kind of like one of the hero flowers because it's standing alone. Over here, let's have a little pathway. We'll have some stones to help mark it a little bit too. Take care of the bottom of the door with a door step maybe. And then just like a little pathway. Not that complicated. That's a strange little scene. You know, we could build on this as well. Like over here in the background. I do already have flowers there. And plus, if you build much higher than this chimney here, you don't want to have whatever you're burning down here, the smoke getting into the other parts over there. No, I think we should have that be the height. We already have this part here, not really a spire, but we'll leave that alone, I think. I'm going to put in little window panes though. Perhaps they would have had the bottoms of little, let's say, bottles that they could have used. I'll put little tiny streaks in it. I think that's enough. I don't think it needs anything else beyond that. Just a doodle this morning, and then luckily I don't have any snow to shovel, so that is okay. The car might be a little frosty. Let's have a little bit of the roof support up here and one on that side. I think that's it. Well, folks, thanks for hanging out for a minute or so. I don't think we need to do anything else to that little doodle. All right. Have a great day. Ciao for now.